Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlund. I am your host today, and I have with me one very special Infinity Bro. He's special to me from the bottom of my heart. It's Zayne Ellis.
Aww.
Zayne, how are you doing today?
Aren't you just starting this episode off just being all sweet and kind?
See, I like to start out episodes being nice, unlike Max. He just likes to rip everybody to shreds. So I gotta play like the opposite bit of Max whenever I host the podcast.
You gotta try to balance things out just because you don't know,
exactly,
what you're gonna get.
That's what we're all about here in the Infinity Bros podcast is balance. So, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time chatting between Zayne and I. Although, we do have things to chat about because Zayne and I and several of the other Infinity Bros are going on a weekend trip to do some ice fishing this weekend. So, we do have some things to talk about. But
super excited.
I know it is very exciting. I know you're all dying to know all about that fishing trip. But we're going to bypass that in lieu of talking about Book of Boba Fett, the finale. And we're going to kind of recap the season a little bit for you guys, and then talk about the finale that just dropped this morning, literally 7 hours ago. So we're getting this one out early because it's what the people want.
Exactly.
And they want Zayne as well.
I have heard that.
I've heard that. Where have you heard that? Just out of
I
curiosity.
have my sources. Don't worry about it.
Zayne's Sources. That's a book. Maybe I don't want to read that book, actually.
I have sources.
Now that I think about it.
They're definitely real. They're not made up.
I promise they're not imaginary. Alrighty then. Well, I'll take your word for it. We'll trust your sources because I don't really want to dig deep into what your sources are.
That's probably a good choice.
So, again, we are talking Book of Boba Fett. Zayne and I had the pleasure of reviewing episodes 1 and 2 of Book of Boba Fett earlier. I believe that is episode 101 of the Infinity Bros podcast. Zayne, I don't believe you've been on since we've had the heavy hitter episodes of 5 and 6. So why don't you tell us kind of just like your whole thoughts about this season coming into the finale?
Like, I didn't know what to expect of what we were getting from Book of Boba Fett. So it was just like, I was just kind of sitting here and taking it as it, came at me. And like, well, whatever it throws, I have low expectations. So let's see what it's going to give. And those first couple episodes, you got a lot of lore, a lot of heavy, story-driven, and it was cool to see, but it wasn't really anything that necessarily was making you sit on the edge of your seat. You're like, it was solid, but it wasn't anything spectacular. And then, you hit those middle couple episodes, and they were like, all right, now we're going to make sure everyone's paying attention. Now we're going to just, like, come out of nowhere, hit you with the sucker punch. And then just like, all right, we're bringing the Mandalorian in. Like, we're bringing all this stuff back in. We're ramping all this stuff up. And you're just like, again, I had no expectations for what this show was coming into it other than, Book of Boba Fett. And, like, I think the opinion kind of began to shift to that maybe they're going to use these shows more of just connecting all of it together, and it's less of a focus of maybe what the title is, because you're going to just get so much other stuff popping up. But at the same time, it's also the Book of Boba Fett. In every book, there's going to be chapters that aren't about the main character, and there's going to be chapters where side characters steal the show. Not that Mandalorian's a side character, but especially seeing the finale, like that. I mean, that wouldn't have worked without the Mandalorian. Like, everything they did in the earlier episodes was to get this finale. So seeing it all now in retrospect, like, it works. But in the time of watching it, you were like, what's the play here?
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about, those first couple episodes, and we really enjoyed all the lore because we're just giant Star Wars nerds. So, and Jarrett, I think, was a little bit more on the side of like he didn't enjoy those first 4 episodes quite as much, and to me, I liked how they were doing it. I liked kind of the slow build that they were doing with it. And then they just hard pivoted with episode 5. Like, and as much as I loved episode 5 and 6, like those were amazing episodes. Like both of those episodes were just fantastic. But as soon as we saw episode 5, I was like, we're not getting back to what we were seeing in those first 4 episodes. No. Like they hit the ground running in episode 5. And I knew from that point on, I was like, all right, this is it then. We're just going to ride this crazy wave to the end of this show. It ended up being a little disjointed, and I was a little bummed by that because I was maybe one of the, you and I both, maybe were on the side of like, we were enjoying where the direction it was going, and it just kind of, those big gigantic Star Wars lore episodes in 5 and 6 just derailed the whole show in a good way.
Right.
Like if that's possible, like they were fantastic and I absolutely loved them, but man, they just totally took you out of the whole vibe of Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
So, on the Infinity Bros podcast, we rank things on a scale of 0 to 6. We're going to put that bumper right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
So, Zayne, I know you had mentioned, I think we both actually ranked, I think, the first 2 episodes 5 out of 6. What would you rate the rest of, you can go episode to episode if you want. You can rank it as a whole up to episode 7. Go ahead and just like rank these episodes for me. Like, where do they sit?
I still feel fairly, because like you said, like we're very much more into that lore. So like I'm still confident on like the 5 out of 6 for those first ones, that really the Boba Fett heavy, kind of with everything with the Tusken Raiders and all that stuff. But then, yeah, the dial just cranks up to 6, especially for episodes 5 and 6. Those episodes were just brilliant, and not in just from the aspect of the action. Like that's what, like that's what it felt like, the future of what Star Wars is, where we're going, and it's just like this is what I want to see. Yeah. Like this is the cool stuff. And then for me, going into 7, I have some of the complaints, but with episode 7, I'm also just going to completely go the other way because of something that happens, which just hits right to my heart. So I'm going to say episode 7 is a 6 out of 6 because it's...
Wow.
It's...
Okay.
I mean, we're not going to go into spoilers yet, but...
Yeah.
You're going to know the reason why I give it a 6 out of 6 if you haven't figured it out already.
I think I know what you're talking about, because I think we discussed it pretty heavily actually in our episode that we talked about. So we'll get into that in a bit, but I just want to pretty much reiterate everything that you're talking about. Like that's almost exactly how I would rank it. The first 4 episodes of Boba Fett, I really enjoyed actually. I liked the direction they were heading. It was a little slow building, and I was kind of like waiting to see how they were going to connect the dots. And then they just were like, we're not connecting them. We're actually just not going to do that. But episodes 5 and 6 were so good. And they gave us so much pure Star Wars that you can't not rank them 6 out of 6 in my mind. Like if you're a true Star Wars fan, like, I mean, we're not like gatekeeping or anything. If you absolutely did not like those episodes, like you're absolutely entitled to your opinion.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
No. Actually, wait a minute. No. But like, I honestly can't see how you don't like those episodes as a Star Wars fan, because they just cram-packed all this Star Wars lore into them, and they were just fantastic. So, I think we're on kind of the same page coming into this episode, but I will warn you, like I've got a lot of mixed feelings after this finale.
Oh no, like I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just saying, like, there's the one big reason why I'm giving it 6 out of 6, because it's like it's right up my alley, and I was like, I can't deviate from it.
So before we go any further, If you guys haven't watched episode 7 of the Book of Boba Fett, it is the finale of the show. You need to go watch it. It's incredible how they closed this show out. We'll put a spoiler warning right here.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
And we've already spoiled, the entire season up until this point. If you guys have not watched this episode, hit pause on this podcast, go back, watch that episode, and then come back, because we are going to be talking all things episode 7 and the future of Star Wars. Man, we're going to get deep in the weeds, as Mark and Max like to say about Star Wars, which is, it's fun, right? So we've been theorizing about Marvel for the past year, and really the only Star Wars content we got last year was Bad Batch, which was still fun and good, but like there wasn't really any theorizing to be had, because it was just like you just went along with the show and like watched it, and it was enjoyable, it was fun, but we weren't speculating on what was going to happen next in the Bad Batch. It was just a fun, enjoyable show that we could kind of relax and watch. Nice little spin-off to the Clone Wars. So, but it feels like it's been a long time since we've been this excited about Star Wars, right? Like even back to probably Rise of Skywalker. Like, has it been that long? Like 3 years since we've gotten like crazy. Well, we got episode.
We got that from the Mandalorian. We kind of had some of the speculation of what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But outside of that,
yeah, I don't know. I feel like the anticipation was huge for Mandalorian. Speculation maybe wasn't quite on that level. Like, I mean, we were like going nuts with all the Marvel stuff last year, with WandaVision, with Loki, all that stuff. We were like, what could happen? Like, we had the wall set up with all our red strings like all over the place.
Right.
I feel like that's happening with Star Wars right now, and I haven't felt that way about Star Wars for a really long time. Like even in Mandalorian, which I absolutely love. If you go back to our 2020 Stan Lees, it's unanimously won our best show of 2020. Just universally loved across the board by the Infinity Bros. But just like that was another show that we kind of just like, the anticipation was there. We really wanted to see what was happening next, but we weren't like necessarily speculating what was going to happen next. I don't think, like, there was maybe a little bit there, but it wasn't quite as ramped up as I think things are getting right now.
That's fair. Well, I think part of that too was just because we didn't know anywhere that the Star Wars universe could go from there. Whereas that's true. A lot of what we had from the movies and everything with Marvel, like there was way more established. They were like, oh my goodness, everyone has theories. What can we do here? What's going to be the aftermath from this? Whereas with Star Wars, like we just had the movies and we're like, all right, we know there's a ton of stories to tell in the Star Wars universe, but like, where do you go? And I think maybe that's what kind of killed some of the speculation on that, because it's just like you could say anything you wanted to. Like there was no clues, there was no hints. Like it was completely open. And so I think at that point it was more of, all right, let's just see what happens. But now we're kind of getting those threads of kind of building that next series. Yeah,
and I mean, really, the Mandalorian just like busted open those doors towards the stories that we haven't heard of in the Star Wars universe now. Like now they can do whatever they want and just throw it on Disney Plus, just like all the Marvel shows that we've been getting. And we are going to get a taste of that later this year with Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be coming out in May. We got Andor coming out later this year, and then the Ahsoka show I think is supposed to be coming out this year as well. So we have like 3 more live action Star Wars shows that are potentially coming out this year in 2022. So we are eating well as Star Wars fans. It is wild. So we got all the string up on the board here. Episode 7. Let's just dive right in. So we've done all the backstory of Boba Fett. We got a little bit of his like history of how he ended up on Tatooine and in this position. He's basically assembling this squad to fight the Pike Syndicate and get rid of the spice trade on Tatooine. And he assembles a pretty like legit squad. Like he's got Tunetank, which that was a sweet reveal way back in whatever it was, episode 3. He's got this is the only one that really didn't do it for me. The biker gang just has not.
The gall darn mod squad, like no.
The moped biker gang. Like I right away I was like, okay, like it's kind of lame, but like whatever. Like it's Star Wars. Like, you know, we can be a little cheesy in Star Wars. And this episode, they just, gosh, they were so lame.
That is the one thing that like makes me just want to drag this episode down more. And like, I'm not gonna lie, like I would like with what happens in that episode, like part of me was like rooting that they would just get wiped out and we wouldn't have to deal with them anymore. Because I was like, these guys suck. Like,
and the chick like has this blaster rifle that's literally as big as her finger. Like her finger gun was about the same size as the blaster pistol. I was like, well, like, okay, if you're gonna throw a random character at us in Star Wars, make them cool. These guys weren't cool.
They weren't cool at all.
They weren't cool. And they didn't make me excited to see them on screen next at all. So that was the part that I was like, oh man, come on. So they're part of his crew. And they're like, apparently they're legit. Like, cause they were like fighting Tunetank back with Boba, you know, at the palace. So apparently they can fight.
Which is just dumb. It's like, how are these guys fighting? Just like, oh yeah, we're just hanging out in these back alleys in our fancy scooters.
We got these cool prosthetics that we modded ourselves with.
Right. It's just like, okay, but you're going to just take down Tunetank and like, oh, we're going to have like, you guys just are terrible.
Right. I think there's a place for them in this show, but they definitely way overemphasized them in this episode especially, but like in this show in general.
Well, like I understood the aspect of using them kind of as like your city, as Boba using them as like the spies, kind of like the feelers in the city. Like that made sense.
And the whole modding thing like is kind of cool because like they saved Fennec Shand, and you know, obviously spoilers for the post credit scene. They're gonna save Cobb Vanth as well, because he got gunned down by Cad Bane in episode 6, and which is kind of weird. I thought he was going to come back just like in a sling because he literally got shot in the shoulder. So I don't really understand why he's like in a back to tank and like dead. He's not dead, but I don't understand why he was so
Isaac. It's Star Wars.
So taken down.
It's Star Wars. No one's ever really dead.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. But like, it just seemed like the other guy that his deputy or whatever got like 6 shots in the chest.
Yeah, but no one cares about him.
He's lit up.
He's the deputy.
Well, nobody cares about. Yeah, that's why
he's
dead. That's why he's really dead, because nobody cares about him. And I fully expected Cobb Vanth to come back, but I thought he was going to be like actually play a part in this episode, instead of, you know, being dead per se, and then showing up in the post-credit scene that they're gonna, you know, mod him and save him or whatever. So anyways, I thought the modding thing was kind of cool, but like, yeah, using them as your army, just, it took your coolness level down a couple notches. And Boba's cool, and it just, I don't know, it didn't mesh, man. He trusted them way too much.
Right.
With being his like squad or whatever.
And seemingly for no reason. Like it just,
and so Mando comes back. Mando's on the squad. He goes and recruits Cobb Vanth and the people of Freetown, you know, and they come and kind of save the day and stuff like that. You know, instead of those guys, the moped biker gang, why didn't you recruit like maybe 1 or 2 more bounty hunters. Like, I'm sure everybody would love to see Bosk show up at some point. Like, that would have been sweet. Like, some of these other guys that we've seen in other Star Wars lore would have been cool to see.
Well, I can understand the aspect of not wanting full, like, hire other bounty hunters, because bounty hunters, allegiance technically is just to the coin. Like, I understood the point of wanting...
And that makes sense, but I feel like bounty hunters have a little bit of a coalition, like, understanding, like, hey, like, we're bounty hunters, so we kind of look out for each other a little bit. Not like, it's not like we're best buds.
Well, that's fair, but I also think a lot of that was, like, that's kind of how Jabba ran stuff, of just bounty hunters. Whereas I think Boba wanted more of, like, hey, this is your land, protect it. So I think that's kind of more the aspect of wanting the locals kind of to do it. But then it's like, he picked locals that are literally come off as outsiders already.
Yeah.
And it's just they're locals, quote unquote, but you watch that show, like, if you didn't see their origin, you would have never guessed they were from Tatooine. You would have never guessed they were from that city. Like, they don't fit in.
You would definitely think you'd from the underworld of Coruscant or something like that.
You would never get that they were locals to that area, which just kind of is jarring and doesn't really fit.
Yeah, they were just kind of out of place a little bit. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, he gets this crew assembled together, and basically this is the showdown. The Pike Syndicate is going to basically take them out to take over their territory. And that was kind of like, I don't know, man. I have qualms with this whole show, with how they treated the first 4 episodes and then just completely pivoting. Because I really wanted Boba's flashbacks to kind of connect somehow. And really the only thing we're getting is the Pike Syndicate is like the only connection between his past and his present, like what's going on right now. And that just, it didn't do it for me. I was kind of bummed about how they wrapped that whole thing up. But, like, again, it's Star Wars. We're getting a ton of really cool references. So it didn't like drag the show down for me completely. But I wanted to see a more cohesive direction. And we just didn't see.
Well, I think like we had that with the Syndicate, but I think it was not as much on the nose or as brought with it. But like, we also got more of that insight on Boba with Cad Bane, which is kind of its own thing, because like, you don't understand that. Like, if you haven't watched Clone Wars, like, you miss so much of the stuff about Cad Bane, who he is, the relationship he has with Boba, like all of everything that happens and comes to a head in episode 7, like all that's completely lost on anyone who's never watched Clone Wars before. Or it's just, they just think, it's just to write another bad guy.
If you have not watched Clone Wars or Rebels, you need to like stop this episode right now and go start watching that, because and, I've told several people on Twitter this. The first few seasons of Clone Wars are a bit of a slog to get through.
Well,
because they didn't really have a direction until you get kind of going in the 3rd or 4th season. And that's where it really picks up.
Well, it also fits with what we like. There's those first few, like, it's lore heavy. That's why it kind of gets to be a bit of a slog.
Right. And it's important to watch those episodes because it gives you context for the rest of the show. Like, if you don't watch those first few seasons, you're going to start out lost already in Clone Wars. So you need to watch them. But it is like, a lot of people, I feel like, start watching them and they're like, is this it? Like, is this as good as it gets? And no, it's not. It gets much better. So keep watching them. Cad Bane, Zayne, we called this. We called that Cad Bane was going to show up, and they have like 3 showdowns. Like, it's so wild. Like, it was, oh man, that was one of my favorite parts of this episode, was the Boba Fett Cad Bane second showdown where they actually fight. That was
sweet,
man.
That was so cool.
Okay, so am I correct in saying that was the thing that brought up the episode for you? Was that like your favorite part?
No, well, that was definitely up there. It's not my favorite part, but that was like that's right up by the top because that was so cool. Like
that was awesome. So
that's what you wanted to see. Like we want this
exactly.
showdown.
We wanted to see the showdown, and I was torn when I finally watched this scene because I kind of had an inkling that Cad Bane might die. I didn't want that to happen, but he did. So Boba takes him down, and after a pretty good fight, by the way. That was a good fight, and this season has not been great for action. The action had, like, in comparison to the Mandalorian, the action hasn't been that great. Like, it's been fine, and it's still Star Wars, but it just doesn't match up to the Mandalorian's like sick action. I feel like.
I feel like a lot of this too, especially when you bring in Cad Bane, a lot of this stuff, I feel like Book of Boba Fett has way more of, hey, we're gonna hit some of this nostalgia, we're gonna give some of this stuff that like these fans of Clone Wars and the comics and stuff, like this is gonna be not necessarily a swan song to that, but like we're gonna give you guys more of this is what you guys want to see. And it's the same with like the Cad Bane stuff. Like I'm torn on both ways on that too, because I'm like, oh man, it sucks that they killed him. Then, of course, part of me is also like, well, Boba Fett also shot him in the head and he survived. So maybe they could just be like, oh, he somehow survived.
Also, so I'm like, I was like a little curious after this episode, and I did some digging. Cad Bane is 71 years old in this show. He's old.
Well, that's why, like, Boba even says that to him about, like,
you're an old man, right?
Like, and that's. It showed on that, and that's why part of me too is just like, okay, it makes sense to kill him where they did, to have that fight. It also makes sense of everything from the Clone Wars, that was the fitting end, that Boba finally over, like that was the fitting, like, and if you were gonna do that and kill it and Cad Bane remains dead, that's the way it needs to be done, and that's how they did it. So I can't complain.
One of the greatest like callbacks is that Cad Bane, I believe it's when he is facing the Bad Batch in season, gosh, is it season 7 of? No, it's probably in actually Bad Batch.
Yeah,
he's like, once you've beaten a clone and you know the clone, like they're easy to take down. So it's almost poetic that Boba Fett, a clone, is the end of Boba Fett, or is the end of Cad Bane. Like that was pretty.
But
cool.
That's also another tie-in, which the Filoni's genius, or even Favreau's, of that was Cad Bane's whole thing. Once you know how to take down a clone, it's easy because it's always do the same thing. Well, they have this whole fight. He exhausts all his resources. What does Boba Fett end up beating Cad Bane with? The stick that he learned from the Tusken Raiders. Like, Boba Fett's a clone, but he learned something new.
Right. Yeah,
and that's what Cad Bane didn't expect. And like, and that was kind of the whole showing of like people change. And like that, even that conversation as Cad Bane's there, like trying to ready to aim up the shot to take him out, of like, you're always a killer. Is he trying to say the whole thing? And Boba's like, showing that like, no, I mean, yeah, he ends up killing him in the end to show that, no, I'm not afraid to do what needs to be done.
You're right, exactly.
But it's also like, I learned something different, and to take him out with the, I always forget what the name of that stick's called. I feel like we've looked it up every single time.
Yeah, we totally looked it up. The gaffy stick.
The gaffy stick, that's what it is.
Gaffy stick.
But like
we
that
totally
was
looked that up last
100% the callback on that, because that wasn't a clone thing at all. Like, that was Boba Fett learned something new.
That was brilliant. I thought that was like, that fight and the death of Cad Bane, I thought was like almost as poetic as like Darth Maul dying, and then Obi-Wan like just holding him in his arms. Like that's like the kind of the vibes that I was getting. Like, this is a very epic fight, and it was like just very fitting for Cad Bane to die that way.
100%.
The one I was so. This is why I was torn, because like I want to see Cad Bane so much more in live action. Like, I want more. The thing is, though, Star Wars is not like Marvel. Like, we can get Star Wars shows from any point in the Star Wars timeline. It's not like Marvel, where it's like pretty linear, and we're, and obviously that's probably going to change with the whole Loki timeline thing going on in Marvel. But generally it's pretty linear. Star Wars, we could get a show at any point in the Star Wars timeline, so we could absolutely see more of Cad Bane in live action.
Oh,
like
for
that's
sure.
not off the table. Maybe even in Obi-Wan and Ahsoka coming up. Ahsoka, I'm assuming, is like with the timeline. Obi-Wan, I think, is a little bit further back in the timeline.
Yeah.
It's not like currently in the Mandalorian timeline right now. Because Obi-Wan's dead.
Right.
I don't know why I even would say that, but yeah. So
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, spoiler alert for
That Obi-Wan's
for
dead.
Empire Strike Back. Yeah,
But it does give me some excitement. The fact that they were like, hey, we're going to give Cad Bane, even though it was only for a couple episodes. So now the thought that I've had recently now is I wanted an Obi-Wan, and I hope they give it an Ahsoka too. Like, you gave us Cad Bane, give us Hondo Ohnaka. Give us Hondo. We need Hondo now.
Oh my
like,
gosh,
you give us
that'd
Hondo,
be amazing.
that's the icing on the cake. We need Hondo, either in Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, or both.
Oh yes, please. Oh my gosh. If you guys have not watched Clone Wars, you're missing out. Or Rebels. Both of them. Amazing shows. You're missing out on some of the best characters in Star Wars. Not even joking. Hondo Ohnaka. That's his name, right? Hondo Ohnaka.
Yeah.
I think is one of the best characters in Star Wars, guys. He's so fun. But yeah, we definitely need to see him in live action at some point too. So, man, so this showdown was epic. And I think this was my favorite moment in this episode, because I'm going to be completely honest. I do not like Robert Rodriguez's action scenes. This whole episode just felt like the robots get out, like the Pikes bring these robots in. Like the showdown fight scenes when they were all standing there was pretty cool, like fine. Especially seeing Mando and Boba Fett whip out their jetpacks and fly around shooting these guys. That was a really, really cool moment. But then when the big crawler machine gun things come out, the people start running, and they're running for 10 minutes down a wide open street away from these crawler things. Guys, you're from Tatooine. I think you could be a little smarter than this. This is a little ridiculous. Come on, you can and they just keep running away as this thing is shooting them. It's that trope to me in movies when somebody's on the train tracks and they run on the train tracks
To try to run away from the train.
To run away from the train. Get off the train tracks. Get off the train tracks. Then you don't have to worry about running away from the train. But no, they'll keep running on the road to get away from this thing where it can clearly keep chasing them. So that was lame.
Maybe they were trying to confuse that with tactics that it wasn't expecting.
Yeah, the whole biker gang, the moped. I want to say moped because I don't like calling them a biker gang because that insinuates that they're tough.
Yeah, those are
they're
mopeds.
The moped gang, they're cornered by some random civilians in another section of town. Come on, these guys, it's just, I don't know.
I would have no issue if that whole moped squad just got wiped out right there. They would have not been any loss to me.
I don't know if it's his cinematography in these fight scenes. I don't know. Something doesn't do it for me. And I think Jarrett mentioned it a couple episodes back, that the moped chase scene in episode 4, maybe, it seems like they're driving 25 miles per hour.
Yeah, that whole
it just seems so slow.
That whole scene was so cringe.
Right, and the action in this episode kind of reminded me of that. It seemed like it was just happening in slow motion somehow. It wasn't in slow motion, but it seemed like it was in slow motion, and it just, I don't know. Except for the parts that we've talked about already, the Cad Bane Boba fight was fantastic. The jetpacks, incredible moments. But everything else. And then, we did get the Rancor at the end with Boba showing up on top of the Rancor. That was sweet. And we kind of, kind of like knew that was coming at some point, because like why the heck would he get a Rancor and ask the guy to train him to ride him?
That's straight up why they teased it. And literally after that was teased in that one episode, I was like, this needs to be in the finale. Oh, yeah. And that's exactly what was in the finale. And that was my favorite part. Boba Fett shows up riding a Rancor and fights giant robots. It's Isaac. It's a giant monster fighting giant robots. It's the coolest thing ever.
I know. I thought of you actually. I was like, this is this is some like total Godzilla versus like, mech type of thing.
Well, that's kind of my part of it, of how that whole scene was shot. And like as I'm sitting here listening to you, how explaining like, oh, it felt like it's slow motion, and why were the people like just running down the road, blah, blah. Well, to me, from the other side, they shot that like a Godzilla King Kong movie. When Godzilla's coming down the street, people just run down the street. Like, that's kind of that slow, the lumbering. And you even had that in the end when the Rancor climbs that tower. That's King Kong.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he put so much of those homages from these monster movies. And, like, that's why I loved it. Because it felt like you were like, hey, we're going to incorporate some Godzilla, some King Kong.
I mean, I did get those vibes. I just don't like those movies as much as you do, so it just didn't.
Right,
didn't
that's fair. That's fair. Like that's why I get like it's not going to hit, but like for me, I was like, yes, this is fantastic. You're going to get me every time.
I'm honestly like, I'm so happy that's your favorite part. Like
it's just it's so sense. Cool. Like I get. I'm a simple guy. You give me giant robots fighting giant monsters. I'm all in. All in. Just yeah.
So we also get Grogu back. He comes back on an X-wing. R2-D2 flies him back. He chose the chain link armor, Beskar armor, which I think it was pretty clear that if Luke was going to give him a choice, he was going to choose the armor and Mando. Like Grogu had zero attachment to Luke, probably didn't even want to get left with him in the first place. So like I don't think there was really a chance that he was going to stay with Luke. But you didn't get to talk about this, and actually I don't think I did either. What did we think about Luke having Yoda'S lightsaber at the end of episode 6? What were your thoughts on that, Zayne?
I mean, I guess it was one of those things you're like, it makes sense because you're kind of bringing Grogu along. Like, I know from like the last episode, Heather talking about how it could, be setting up kind of like this alternate timeline of things. And it's like, why does Luke have that lightsaber? How does he have that lightsaber? But it would make sense, especially what we got from Rebels. And we know we're going to get, Ezra, we're getting Sabine, like we're getting those people. So like you're going to have all that in there. So you got to assume kind of all the events that happened in Rebels. Like, could they have gotten Yoda's lightsaber from somewhere else in the timeline possibly and create, use the Force in kind of that ultimate way of changing the whole timeline even? Maybe. I don't know, but I think it was kind of you had to do something of giving kind of Grogu that option of going back to what you had or continue on. So I think it was good that it was Yoda's lightsaber. I think that was more of the selling point to kind of here's the fork in the road, because I don't think it would have had that impact of just like, oh, here's just some regular random lightsaber. Like I think it was there was intentionality behind it.
Yeah, it definitely got us as Star Wars fans more intrigued and interested than if it were just like a random lightsaber or some other random Jedi object, So that's definitely true. But you touched on something that I want to talk about a little bit here. So Mark mentioned in our last episode that he thinks the current Star Wars verse, or whatever you want to talk about, is an alternate timeline from the sequel trilogy. So this is kind of a theory that's going around because of, and he mentions it's because of Yoda'S lightsaber, actually, because in the comics, which are canon, they're Disney, Marvel comics, Yoda's lightsaber gets destroyed with all of his stuff. So he believes that because of the events of Rebels that you mentioned, they are in an alternate timeline. The sequel trilogy is no longer canon, and we're kind of like treading new territory in the Star Wars universe. So what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll kind of get to round it off with mine after you share yours.
I mean, I feel like just with everything we had with the sequel trilogy, this is the way you can
This is the way. Yeah.
set stuff up that you don't necessarily delete everything that happened. It's kind of like taking the playbook, what you had with Marvel, of just like, all right, this doesn't necessarily mean that didn't happen. It's just now you have an alternate timeline. It's just another, universe, multiverse, which we know can happen from Rebels. We can have now. Might it have different effects of how the timeline works because of the Force? Sure, maybe. I don't know. But if anyone, with Filoni and Favreau, like, would come up with a way of, hey, we're not going to just completely like disregard what happened in the sequels, but like we want to have a future of where we're going with this, they would come up with a way that makes sense of doing it. And the most sensical way of doing it is, what if there was some change in the timeline somewhere? Or it doesn't even necessarily have to be a huge change, if you want to go butterfly effect with it. Because even in Rebels, because when they pulled, because I believe what you had from Rebels, like Ahsoka was supposed to die fighting Darth Vader. Ezra saves and pulls her out.
Yeah,
so like that's already
Yeah.
broke.
Already screwed
That
up the
already
timeline,
screwed something
potentially.
up, right? So now maybe that's the reason why we have Ahsoka when we shouldn't. So maybe that completely changed stuff. Did she go and save Yoda, or does that just completely change everything? So like that's how it makes sense to me that this is some sort of alternate universe, or at least someone somewhere changed something and things are slightly different.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. I think I like the way you described it a little bit more than Mark, because Mark was totally leaning into sequels not canon anymore type of thing. Like he was thinking like this is whole new territory, or that's the vibe that I got from listening to their episode anyways, that this is all new, that we're treading completely new territory. But I think yours sounds a little bit more like doable, like just little tweaks here and there. Maybe there are some things that will be different from the sequel trilogy, but Disney spent way too much money on the sequel trilogy to just completely throw them out of the timeline and like totally retcon them.
That's why part of me feels like it wouldn't go that route. But even just from this aspect that just kind of like popped in my head, imagine where you have this other split, and like maybe that's why this focus, we're getting a lot, caught up on Yoda's lightsaber or the Beskar steel, or for Grogu. Like, what if that was the choice? Like, what if in this other timeline, like there was another one where Grogu takes the lightsaber, stays with Luke. That's why Luke builds his academy, which then leads us into the sequels, and he fails and all that. Whereas now Grogu took the armor. Luke decides, hey, I shouldn't make the academy. Ahsoka starts the academy. Because remember, when Mandalorian shows up there, Ahsoka was the first one to say this is going to be a school for learning. That didn't come from Luke. It came from Ahsoka. So, maybe that choice was, to put it in Marvel terms, maybe that was their Nexus event.
Yeah.
If Grogu, maybe
that's
how it happens. Grogu takes the lightsaber, and that becomes the path that we have the sequel trilogy. But he took the armor instead, and now it could be an entirely different path,
Right. Yeah. So what makes me believe that there's less changes than we probably are making it out to be is actually Luke giving Grogu this choice. And maybe there's a deeper thing behind it. I don't know. Maybe we're totally overthinking. We're probably overthinking everything here, but that's the fun part of it. So Luke, this choice that he gives Grogu and the whole training sequence, honestly, kind of like it unsettles me a little bit. Not in the sense of like the CGI. So that's like, I think that's totally amazing. Like what they're doing with like the deep fake CGI technology. Totally on board with that. The thing that unsettled me, but it kind of fit his character, was that Luke is like being pretty harsh and like totally like set on rebuilding the Jedi Order, which makes sense in his character, but at the same time, man, it's really easy to see how he could go from that, kind of mindset to where they are in the sequel trilogy with the choices that he made and his whole Jedi Academy getting destroyed by Kylo Ren. Like I could totally see that path happening with where Luke is at in episodes 5 and 6.
Right.
So that to me was like, oh man, they're actually like leaning in to the sequel trilogies a little bit. Like, and obviously we as Star Wars fans are very conflicted because the consistency between the sequel trilogies themselves, the movies themselves, is like all over the place. But it seems like they're wanting to, and they do this with all the shows, like with Clone Wars, with Rebels. They fill in the areas that we don't know about, that we have questions with these shows. They fill in those areas instead of like changing them or making it a different story. They make the original story better by making these shows. So, I mean, I kind of was like, oh, you know what? Like, alrighty then. If they're going to make the sequel trilogies better for me by, adding content in between the lines like they did with the prequel trilogy, if you guys are prequel trilogy haters, watch Clone Wars because it will make the prequel trilogy better for you. It fills in the blanks where we're questioning things in the prequel trilogy. And I think that's the direction that they're heading for the sequel trilogy, honestly. So that was just intriguing to me. But I could totally see where everybody's coming from with this alternate timeline stuff. Like something seems off and funky about the timeline. So I could also see that. And we are obviously going to be playing way more into Rebels with Ahsoka coming up later this year. And we already know she's looking for Thrawn for some reason, assumingly to get Ezra and, figure out whatever the heck they're going to do next, I guess. So, like, a lot of things coming down the pipeline, which is awesome. All right, back to episode 7, Zane. What was your final rating of this episode? And then after that, final rating of the Book of Boba Fett, the whole entire season.
Oh, boy. Well, now that we're just... I initially said 6, but then I just was thinking about the Mod Squad again. It just annoyed me.
Mod Squad, I like that.
I'm gonna drop 7 to a 5.5. As much as the whole Boba Fett riding a Rancor, like I'll go 5.5. And I think I'll stick with that for this series as a whole as 5.5. You have that kind of the lore building in those first couple episodes, and then it just kind of takes off in the back. But like there's enough of what they did kind of with the mod squad and like how we kind of talked about the gripes we had with it that I can't give the whole series in total as a 6. But I definitely wouldn't be fair at anything under 5 because it's like we got Cad Bane. We had, the cool showdowns. We had everything that we had with the Mandalorian. We had Boba Fett riding a Rancor.
You're making a really good case for me to up my score right now because I'm thinking about it.
The addition of Cad Bane alone holds so much weight for me. That's why I have to. I don't
totally
think I can go lower than 5.5 as the show as a whole. Even though he's only in like the 2 episodes, like he is a beloved character of mine. Like he's a top 5 Star Wars character. of all time, and the fact that we got him in live action, that it was the culmination of what you'd want it to be, the finishing of his story, of everything that ties with Boba Fett. Like, it's a 5.5 less because of Boba Fett and more because of Cad Bane. But like, I can't go lower because Cad Bane literally just hauls that score up.
You're making really good arguments, Zane. That it's making me rethink my final score here.
But again, because of that 0.5,
yeah, right.
That mod squad, you're killing it.
The mod squad, man.
You guys suck.
They're bringing it down. Okay, so for the last episode of Book of Boba Fett, man, I'm gonna be honest. This is my least favorite episode in this whole show. The great, brilliant moments did not bring it up for me. Like, it brought it up enough. Like, I think it's still a good episode. It's a fine finale. Like, I was after the hype of episodes 5 and 6, where after I got done watching them, I literally texted you. I was like, Zane,
right.
I need to talk about this right now.
Right.
Like, I was so excited about those episodes.
Especially after that Cad Bane reveal. Like,
oh, dude. Oh, my gosh. After the Cad Bane one, I was like, Zane, watch this right now and get back to me ASAP. Like, I need to talk about this. Like, I was so pumped about it. But anyways, this episode just didn't make me really, really excited about Star Wars in general, which is sad because those episodes 5 and 6 are so hype. They're really up there. So I have to bump this one down to a 4.5, which is still, in my eyes, solid.
Yeah, that's fair.
Again, great moments, but just overall, just didn't do it for me. And the show itself, I have to go with a 4.5 as well. Like, it was a good for like a Star Wars fan. It was fantastic. I could just see the casual fan or just a critical Star Wars fan, which there's plenty of those out there, watching this show and just with it's not being cohesive as a show. Like, The Mandalorian flows so well. You know what I mean? Like, it goes from episode to episode. It's episodic and serial in nature, right? Like, this was just disjointed as a show. Episodes 5 and 6 didn't even have Boba Fett in it. Like, it was wild, and those are my favorite episodes in the season. That doesn't bother me though. Like, I the Boba Fett thing, that's fine. Like, I loved his character. Tamira Morrison did a great job. I didn't care that much that he wasn't in those episodes,
right?
Because they were amazing episodes. But this whole show just is not cohesive. The Star Wars lore for me brings it up a lot. And I know Jared actually like trashed the first 4 episodes. He gave them like 2s out of 6s, and I'm not there. Like, I enjoyed those first 4 episodes. But overall, as a show, I think I rated each of the episodes higher than I rate this entire show, just because as a show, it doesn't really work. And I said this in a previous episode, this is a filler show. Like, this is a show to keep Star Wars fans happy for the next show.
Yeah, I can get a filler. I would not as much of a filler show, because to me, a filler show would be more of a, hey, here's just 7 episodes of just kind of like whatever, just to kill time. Like, so much of stuff, what happened in Boba Fett sets up for the future. Like, it's more of like an engine. Yeah, it's disjointed.
It's not complete filler.
It's disjointed. It doesn't always necessarily like come across how you'd want it, but like it kind of is that engine of driving. Like, all right, we're still propelling stuff to the future. Like, we still got bits from Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Grogu, Boba. Like, it had enough of the stuff that, hey, we're setting stuff up from the future, but we're also resolving stuff from the past and giving that nostalgia. Like, we're bringing in Cad Bane. We're gonna, revisit the pod racing scene. We're gonna, bring in, the new ship for Mandalorian is an old Naboo cruiser. We have, a BD-1 appearance. Like, there's so much that you had from nostalgia and also what's going forward. But yeah, it's disjointed. It doesn't necessarily flow the greatest, but like it had enough that here's props to the past and here's what we're building kind of in the future. Maybe not you want one more or the other, but it did not flow as good as it probably could have. But at the same time, with the premise of the show, I mean, I suppose you could have made it flow better. Again, if you got rid of the mod squad.
See that right. I think they could have made it, and we talk about this, ad nauseum with the Marvel shows. Like they've stuck to this formula now after WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier of 6 episodes per show, which, I mean, we've talked about it so much. It's really tough to develop your characters in 6 episodes. And I don't want to say they needed more episodes in this, but they could have used one more to
part of me is
stretch out some of this. I don't know.
Part of me is almost feeling the other way. Instead of 7 episodes,
they definitely
see, you could have broke this down. The first 4 episodes of giving Boba's backstory of all that stuff, you could have done that in an episode, given us the 2 Mandalorian episodes, and given this the finale. Like, you could have cut this down and gave those parts, and it still would have had the same effect.
What you could have done is, you're absolutely right. So those first 4 episodes, you absolutely could have shortened.
You could have compressed that down.
You could have, I don't know, man. Like, what I wanted in this show is some way to connect Boba's past and his present, and they kind of did a little bit, but it didn't do it enough for me to make it like a Boba Fett show.
Well, I think they did it. It's just they spread it out enough that it was so. Like in the beginning, obviously you had the big question, like, "Oh my goodness, how did he get out of the Sarlacc pit?" Okay, that was one big part of the Boba Fett connection, and then everything with the back to tank, and then to kind of explain, okay, how did he survive once he got out of the Sarlacc pit? Okay, but then you kind of got this drawn out, okay, and then all this side story of fighting this, and all this happened with the spice trade, and then you come to this other part on the other end, which ties it in with Cad Bane, which is a huge part of Boba Fett's story. But it's like those were kind of the sandwiched, ends, and you just didn't have quite enough in the middle.
Maybe I just wanted more Cad Bane. Maybe that's why I wanted.
I don't think you can ever go wrong with more Cad Bane.
Just one episode of Cad Bane and what he's been up to in the past 40 years.
See, right. Well, see that, and even honestly awesome. Too, like how they have it with the Syndicate. Oh, they framed those bikers. Do you know how much cooler if they would have given us an episode where if it was Cad Bane that killed all those Tusken Raiders? That would have been so much cooler. That would have been so much cooler if it was Cad Bane that took those guys out.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
So they made some choices. I think Filoni has the overall vision and direction of this show. Robert Rodriguez, I don't know. Like, I didn't love the things that he was doing in this show. Bryce Dallas Howard did a fantastic job with that episode 5. From what I understand, Favreau wrote the show. Like, he wrote the script. So, and the script wasn't terrible. Like, it was fine. But I don't know, dude. I think it was the direction. So I'm just not crazy about the choices that they decided to make in the show. But still, really, really rich Star Wars lore. Some really awesome moments in this whole entire show. Like, almost every episode has a moment that was just like a really, really, really cool moment. Right. So yeah, really loved it. So I'd say 4.5 for this episode, 4.5 for the whole show, which I don't think is a bad score. I think that's pretty solid. That 4.5, anything above a 4 is rewatchable in my
That's
opinion.
Fair. Yeah, for sure.
So I would definitely rewatch this one. I think where I get hung up on the rating system is I play the comparison game a lot. And when I stack this show up to The Mandalorian, it just doesn't hold up,
That's fair. I think for me, looking back on it, is doing a rewatch of this show. It's one of those things where you'll watch through the whole thing, once, but then multiple times through the year, you're going to go back and just rewatch those last 3 episodes Like, you'll rewatch that multiple times, but you don't want to go through the
True.
slog of the first 4.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I'll probably rewatch 5, 6,
Like,
and
you'll
7 for
occasionally
sure, yeah.
maybe watch that, but it's really for the setting point.
Just
of
for
the,
Cad Bane.
Right,
honestly.
exactly.
I'll just
And that's
watch
why,
those.
like I said, that's why I have it so high, because of Cad Bane. I will literally go back and rewatch those episodes because of Cad Bane. I finished that episode
I'm with
with
you on
the,
that,
the
dude.
Cad Bane reveal at work, and I came home and watched that episode again, because it's like, it's Cad
Yes.
Bane. Like, I will rewatch those
That's
episodes
amazing.
over and over.
We absolutely need him in more live action stuff, though. That's
Right.
fantastic. All right, so here we go, Zane. Before we close it out here, anything you want to say about Book of Boba Fett, Episode 7, entire show? Anything else you want to hit on?
Well, the thing that just popped in my mind, how long do you think it's going to take before we get a Funko Pop of Boba Fett riding the Rancor? Because
Dude.
because that's going in the collection.
Yes, please.
That is immediately
gosh.
a must buy.
That would be amazing. Oh, it's coming. It's
has
gotta
to be.
coming,
It has
dude.
to be.
That's
Like,
amazing.
I-
Robbie
I
just
need-
pooped his
right,
pants. after
literally,
hearing
I'm
that.
like,
he doesn't
I
even
need it.
like Star Wars, but he still pooped his pants there.
I need it.
That's amazing. Yes, I am fully on board with that. Fully endorse Rancor with Boba Fett riding Funko Pop. Awesome. All right, Zane, we're gonna do something. Obi-Wan is the next show coming up. It's supposed to be dropping in May, so probably May the 4th. I would assume we'll probably
Right,
get the
yeah.
first episode. Is a good bet. Zane, one thing I want from you. What obscure random Star Wars character do you think we're going to see in the Obi-Wan show?
Well, I mean, like I kind of already hinted it. It's got to be Hondo. Like, not
That would be
not that it's
fantastic,
not
dude.
that he's obscure, but like never in a million years did I think we were going to get Cad Bane in a Boba Fett show. So it would only make sense and be super fitting that Hondo shows up in an Obi-Wan show. Like, just the way those two played off with each other, the way the relationship they had in Clone Wars, like, that would be the most fitting thing. Like, he needs to show up in Obi-Wan, and then pour that over into Ahsoka, like that, because it had enough of that ties with Ahsoka too. But like, I attribute Hondo so much with Obi-Wan, like almost as much as what I would attribute Darth Maul, even, because it's like those two characters are have such those ties with them. So I think, like, yeah, we need both those. We need Darth Maul and we need Hondo in the Obi-Wan show.
Yeah, dude, I am absolutely 100% on board with that. Hondo Anaka, please give it to me. I think it's safe to assume we'll probably see Darth Maul. And
You'd have to.
like, he's such a part of Obi-Wan's story. We're probably going to see Darth Maul. And Jared actually mentioned in one of the last episodes, he doesn't want to see Darth Maul ever again because he's been so rehashed and just he's been so
But like he hasn't
used in the Star Wars universe.
But he hasn't.
And it's all like Clone Wars is really the only big one that he's been in. Like, he's a little bit
this is
not much.
This is where I'm going to disagree on that, because the difference of why Darth Maul is so key to everything is because Darth Maul is to the Sith what Ahsoka is to the Jedi. Ahsoka fell away from the Jedi because she realized their principles were more about the Jedi, and that's why she got pushed away. And that's what Darth Maul realizes too, that the Sith were just out to use him, that the Sith didn't have the answer either. It's like they're counterparts to the same thing that happened. And like, just that combination is very cool to see as you're watching Clone Wars, especially then as you get into that final season, to see that and see those characters make that realization that we're on opposite sides of the coin, but we're kind of in the same spot and we've kind of learned the same lessons.
Yes, thank you, Zane. I have a child invading my room right now. So, well, Zane, I think that's a great way to cap it off. Darth Maul, Hondo Anaka in Obi-Wan. That's our call.
Yes,
because we called one earlier in the show. We gotta make a call for.
We're on a
Obi-Wan,
roll.
so.
You know, we called Cad Bane. Let's put our stamp on it. We're calling it.
Yeah. Let's keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. Awesome. Well, Zayne, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It has been a pleasure having you on.
Always a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am Isaac Edlund. Make sure you guys check out all the previous reviews of the Book of Boba Fett that we have. We also have a Peacemaker review last episode and a Jackass review. Kind of mind-boggling that we have Jackass review on our podcast, but we do, for those of you who are fans of that. So make sure you check out the Infinity Bros podcast on any major podcast platform. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We love you, 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.